È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con EasyBank, la banca digitale di Intesa Sanpaolo. EasyBank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'Iter Communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'Iter Communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'Iter Communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con EasyBank, la banca digitale di Intesa Sanpaolo. EasyBank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'Iter Communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'Itere Communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'Itere Communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo
Proporre con la propria vita.
esiste anche grazie a te.
Benvenuti e buon pomeriggio.
Welcome everybody and good afternoon for this first afternoon of the days of the meeting. Today we're going to start with a theme that's very important, very intense. In front of this cloud. It's full of men, this panel, but very qualified for the talk. The difference between poverty and misery moves charity. This is following the latest data from Istat. Nearly 1 in 10 people in Italy lives in absolute poverty. That's about 5 million people from 2 million families who are unable to maintain a dignified standard of living. So to sustain them, there's a widespread... Sorry, these people live in a condition of real poverty. There is a difference that's possible to deepen, to look into between poverty, what is poverty and that which is misery, and which touches each one of us, because we can't fall only into pietism, into doing charity work, doing charity, which is necessary, but it's not a full solution to the problem. And this makes us responsible to think about the responsibilities that each one of us has to face this crisis in our society. I'll present them bit by bit, our guests, who in different ways are facing each day, every day they're facing poverty. And first off, I'll thank you for being here. And we'll start with Davide Rondoni, who's a poet, doesn't need any further introduction from us, who's the president of the National Committee for the 800th year of the death of St. Francis. And Francis is really the emblem of fight against poverty. And maybe you can help us understand the difference between poverty and misery. So thank you very much. Good day. So you're here with us, so you're equal to all 5 of us blokes here. To not make any mistakes, I'll start with Dante Alighieri, who's always right. Dante, in the canto that he dedicates to St. Francis, he has a crazy, amazing scene that's kind of between erotic and mystical, like great poets can do. At a certain point, I'll say it briefly, he describes the fact that Lady Poverty who will be eventually the wife, the bride of Saint Francis, after being the widow of Christ. And we already go into this loving metaphor. So the facing poverty isn't a moral problem, but a problem of affection, of love. It's not a question of goodness. Dante says that when Christ goes on the cross, while Our Lady stayed at the foot of the cross, Lady Poverty is so in love with Christ that she climbs on the cross with him. It's a crazy scene, amazing scene. Lady Poverty clambers up on the cross because she's such a lover of Christ that while his mother remains at his feet, she climbs up like a desperate lover. From this scene, Dante goes ahead, and we can start to understand one thing. When we talk about poverty, in the terms that Christianity talks about them, we're not talking about material lack, material misery. If you want, we can say that this needs to be deepened, but poverty is the bride of Christ, in the sense, the love of Christ, the lover of St. Francis, is this experience of the world for which nothing is yours. Nothing. Not even you yourself. And it's for poverty that Francis can say, speak of sister death, because not even I am mine. Poverty is, first of all, this shiver that Christ and St. Francis brought into history, through which, when you look at the people who you love the most, you realize they're not yours. It's the difference between loving and possession. It's there that we experience really what poverty is. The hard poverty, not because you've got 100 euros less, or because you're sleeping on the ground. The real poverty is you experience it when you embrace your children and know that they're not yours, they're not your possession, or that the woman who you go to bed with isn't yours. And I say this because otherwise, bit by bit maybe we'll speak about it, the superposition of poverty is an experience of all of us, or at least everybody who's awake, who hasn't forgotten to not be the lords of the world. St. Francis loved the creatures, like his Canticle of the Creatures, not because they were his, that their Lord is another. And all of the economy, the Franciscan economy, so they're the ones who invented double-entry bookkeeping. Bernardino di Siena, who was a great economist of the 1400s with banks. St. Francis worked against misery. He was an embracer of poverty as liberty, but he didn't confound poverty with misery. When he gave the worldly goods back to his father, he didn't tell his dad to go and sell your business and sleep under a bridge, because Francis is one who recalls us to the fact that nothing is mine, not even I am mine. This is the true shiver of poverty. The misery of is lacking something. And we're all a bit miserable, if you like. We all experience misery, if you like. But why does the rich man struggle more than the poor man? Not because the poor man is better, but the rich man has the illusion of being the lord of the world, because he thinks reality responds more to him because he's rich. But the risk of being rich, a rich man can sink and drown in the depths of the Mediterranean, the same as the last of the poor people. So to distinguish the experience of poverty that St. Francis talks of, and the experience of misery, which instead is you'd give a hand as best you can to someone because they're lacking something, knowing that we're all missing more than just something. Thank you. To realize that each one of us is lacking something moves us to give something we've got, to give time, to give a bit of our time for the benefit of others, to seek to contribute to the creation, to the construction of a society that's more just, with more solidarity, more cohesion. As every week we see this in Buona Notizia, our newspaper section. An experience of this kind is in terms of capacity for solidarity is that of Banco Alimentare, Food Bank. And here we're going to look at 4 versions, if you like, of Food Bank that have come out from this. Marco Puris is the president of Food Bank Foundation. Maybe you can help us a bit understand why, at a certain point, we thought of starting to intervene. It's already back a few years ago, so since '89, to intervene in food poverty, seeking to pull together what could be wasted and distribute it to others.
So thank you very much from me as well for inviting me. If I can, I'd like to echo what Rondoni said. The challenge that Rondoni, let's say, opened to us now is exactly this. How has, as all of us who are poor, as he described it, how are we able to help each other, beginning, by calculating what material things people lack, even the most basic things such as food. So from this experience, the food bank experience I'm learning is very interesting, because the foundation, the experience of this food bank starts as a position of discussion, as an interlocutor between our food systems, between the businesses in the food sector that produce in certain ways the food that we consume, and that as well, I'm sure that others will talk about this better later, but there's a big term of sustainability, of efficiency in the middle of these discussions. And so we need to, in the productive process, that you produce an excess, and this excess production, and this is part of what we said, that we're not an owner of everything. So how can we use this excess production? And we also have those who need what we're producing because they don't have the resources to buy it. And so this is the problem: putting ourselves in the middle, speaking with food producing businesses on one hand, and on the other hand, trying to understand how we can organize together, working together, a way with which to understand with kindness what everybody needs. And that's where we need to start from, because otherwise, we'd just be philanthropists, we'd be an abstract person, not a concrete one, aware of the fact that we'll never solve the problem of misery and of poverty in a wider sense, but rather there's an opportunity for those who donate, who give their time, who like businesses who make themselves available to help us, and a connection with those who receive, who are living the same kind of experience of charity. And this is the most important point of this experience as I've been living it with the food bank and with other related charities. It's a system that puts charity as a method, a charity for those who do and for those who receive. And this is a very complicated process. There's a foundation, there's 21 regional food bank systems, there's over 7,000 local entities, and the working together of all these different levels that are sustained by by donations, the wider food business, the financial system, that allows for a response to this need, this very clear need that we need, that is first of all one of encounter with others. Oh, you won't clap for him then? So Rondoni had a bit more time, so he was able to extend a bit more. But this idea of the food banks, the banchi alimentari, that started from this provocation, this call to be aware that poverty is an experience that regards us all. It then generated further sort of systems of charity in a food bank that we'll discuss before getting back to Barrese and Brandini a bit later. So I'll tell you who we're speaking to now. So the Banco Farmaceutico, the pharmaceutical bank, we're talking to the president, Sergio Dagnotti. So this is also a topic that's become all the more important, and you've been writing a book recently, and you've got an information stand here in the meeting. There are people who don't even have enough money to buy, paracetamol, to buy the most basic painkillers. What is this requirement, and how are you guys rising to this challenge? Well, thank you. This topic of health poverty that we've been facing for 25 years now has also become the core theme of a book we published with our friends at the Catholic University of Milan, who've been accompanying us for years now. And apart from the fact we should change the name, we should call it misery, because we're all poor, so we'd like to combat misery and not poverty. But however, it's not been reducing in recent years. Instead, actually, it's poverty among families has been increasing, as you mentioned at the beginning. The most worrying aspect of the past few months, which we've mentioned, has been made clear by the recent Caritas report, that families with low incomes have begun to be hit, single income families, whereas in the past poverty was more relegated to those who didn't have work, those who'd become unemployed, who had psychological or social problems, whereas now there are families, single-income families, who have had to come to this safety net in the third sector, as we like to call it, made of volunteers. But this kind of volunteering in our experience is highly professional. There are very many medics, doctors, nurses who operate within this reality, not only when they're pensioners, but also while they're actively working. This is an amazing thing. The other aspect that was highlighted before, in reality, we collect these pharmaceuticals that are donated to us by ordinary people, by pharma businesses, or that we save in the pharmacies themselves, because many pharmacies are underused while they're still valid. And we can use these to help the most vulnerable people in the society. The most important aspect is that of working together. I always say that we'll never do anything. We'd never achieve anything if there wasn't this chain. We don't have our own warehouses. We use spaces that are donated to us primarily, or also we also rent some by distributors of pharma products, and also because the law wouldn't allow us to do it by ourselves anyway. So you're also a network that's diffused across the whole country. And yes, our organisation is slightly different from Banco Alimentare, because we only have 2 associations that are federated to us in Milan and in Turin, and the others are kind of local headquarters of the pharmaceutical bank. But we distribute across all of Italy. Most recently, we've been trying to test distributing more delicate products, those that need to remain refrigerated, and that's not because we're great, but because many kind, helpful people want to work with us, and they want to share this experience with us, which is how it made it possible for us to help Gaza, because we have an agreement with the armed forces, and so we operate abroad through the Italian armed forces. These are small things, like Marco said earlier. We won't try and defeat misery on our own. We're a drop in the ocean here, but I think these are, we're giving drops of hope here. Thank you, Sergio.
Poi il tema della
as the theme of poverty is linked also to that of dignity, human dignity, in a sense that it's not because one is poor, indeed, that one is in misery, that they have no dignity. So the attention is, as well as giving food and medicines, but also technological instruments, equipment, because today, if you don't have a computer, let's say, you're a bit cut out of of social life. And so the birth of the pharmaceutical bank, the bank of information bank, of IT bank, is born from this need to give people a tool, an advanced instrument that's up to date, to let people to live in tune with the times. Certainly. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the invitation. When I received this invitation, the first thing I asked myself was, but why am I the president of BTEB, the Bank of IT? Sorry, I've forgotten what it stands for. I'm a bit anxious. So I think maybe other president because they dumped the job on you, perhaps. This is certainly the case. So before doing my intervention, will just last a minute and a half, and I'll read it out. I want to read this thing which I received maybe 10 minutes ago from my daughter, or from someone that my daughter knows about. My daughter Carlotta says, I do this work for free. When I was little, when people asked me what work would you do, I said I'd help people find work. As I grew up, I realized the significance that was in that phrase. Deep down, I do it for a work because, like you say, loving is man's work, is human work. And you, in your daily life, you do this. BTEB is the nth illustration of what I'm saying, because it helps and puts people at the service of those in need, and this is recognized, and they're recognized and given value. So I want to do this for you, loving you with all my heart, and being joyous, grateful for having a dad like this. I love you. And remember that for me, you're always number one. Thank you for everything you do. Transmit it to others, because all the world deserves it, to see and hear what a great man is speaking today. So the task of BTEB is that of sustaining the world of non-profits with technology, helping above all small businesses to overcome the digital divide, helping the growth of knowledge and the person. COVID, which we've almost forgotten, unfortunately, was like the watershed that made the dramatic situation of the digital divide very clear. It showed the enormous need for technology that's useful to give more dignity to people and making them protagonists of their own existence. Words like remote learning, working from home, etc., which were maybe not unknown, but were pretty less used before. And now, if you don't have a mobile or a tablet, whatever you can't, or a laptop, you can't live. And this is the deep reason for the bank. So moving from fixed PCs to tablets and so on. So in this context, BTEB is like a facilitator in the process of reducing the digital divide. The paradox is that these instruments, these tools that are needed, alongside the need of these, there's the fact of businesses who need to get rid of equipment that's only a few years old, that's still perfectly well working. So stuff that the industries are getting rid of can be reconditioned. Each and everything needs to be made perfect so it can to work well needs to work. So families in need through charities, etc., can have this stuff. So this virtuous cycle offers advantages not only to those who receive the stuff, but also but also to the givers of it. So everybody, each of these banks, if you like, has their own role, and then they help in their own way, in making life less miserable. So what is misery, if not the opposite, I think, of hope? So we respond to the needs that touch each one of us. For me, we call this loving someone, wishing someone well. What does this mean, to love, if it doesn't mean to love the good of another? What taste would life had without facing the need of someone else, to helping you stay in front of reality? This way, life becomes attractive and full of taste, because everything is without a payback except for beauty, and this is gratuitousness. Having this in heart, this responsibility, this task, changes the way you look at things. You can contribute to building a bit of a greater world, a better world. Thank you. Thank you, Fabio Mazzoleni. And I'll take the chance to send an embrace to Carlotta and to everybody who's watching us on the internet channels and streaming, the various channels that are transmitting this program, this event, which and all the people who will follow us later on. Thank you. We're close to you. So, think of these banks. Let's close with the Bank of Things. The Vice President, Giorgio Medici, will help us to understand how you're the ones who are kind of, you're a bit on with what's left, the leftovers, are you? Okay. So, exactly, yeah. We were the last born, if you like, in 2009, inspired certainly by the other banks, not for a project of having to do what others weren't doing, but we do in fact collect everything else. So the interesting part is that in this way, these 4 banks are something that it's not a joke. That there's like nothing else in the world that can give an answer to reduce the waste of anything that is proposed to us. So what does Things Bank do? So that the name has changed a bit because maybe it's easy to understand what we do. We work on building materials, fabrics, tools, from solar panels to ambulances. We even we even managed. So the Alpini helped us deal with some off-the-wall kind of stuff. So we're a few of us, and we do a network with 500 companies linked together. There's a bunch of non-profits. Thanks to these 800 non-profits, things get passed through this network to 38 countries in the world. Thank you. So this meets a need that is born indeed from the same inspiration as saying we want to face a need, but also to share something that we've met. So share the meaning of life that we've met, that we've discovered in our experience. And this has nourished Banco Alimentare as a slogan, if you like. The thing that's interesting here is that certainly we share with all of the banks, is common amongst us, is that in doing this, an attention to that which could be the opportunities, because giving is very difficult, as you say. If you're trying to put stuff on eBay is really hard, and imagine with drugs and stuff, you can't just give them away. But to give away an ambulance is really complicated. Because of all of the laws and stuff are there to prevent fraud and tax dodging, and so we need a tax and legal advisors and so on to make sure that it's all above board, so in favour of the final beneficiaries. So we help indirectly. We give the tools to those who can use them to face a need. So we don't help somebody directly who's hungry or needs some drugs or something, some medicines, but to those who need to set up a charity or set up something like this, then we can help them, and we're also able to give things to hospitals in Ethiopia. So these solar panels that went to Syria that we talked about a couple of years ago in the exhibition. Interesting thing is that through this is still a response to this misery, is in the sense of someone who needs to meet a greater response. That's not just for the final receivers of the stuff, but also for us. And I'll cite 2 things, or maybe one of the first of the encounters that we did with a marble maker from Grosseto who need to get rid of a piece of marble. He did it through the nuns of Val Serena. This bit of marble ended up in Burkina Faso. It's amazing, but he did his encounter in life, which finished 2 years later. His life, but it finished with a conversion, with a monastery that prayed for him. And so recently we work with high fashion. We've received donations. I can't say the names of who they're from, and these ended up to refugees in Venezuela. So end-of-line stuff from beautiful fabrics, all well finished, and this was amazing. Sorry. I feel myself. I heard from the chief COO of one of these places, and they said our people need to see something that's different from the world that they live in, and the world of fashion is very complicated from this point of view. This is one of the things that it can happen to anyone. It's one of the beautiful, interesting values for which changes my life through the life of this bank, maybe through meeting other people. Thank you. It's nice to think that even this greater sensibility that the big businesses have, it's not just a need of like greenwashing, etc., but it's actually a change of heart for a different awareness on the behalf of the businesses. So everybody can give their contribution in this way to leave the world a better place to our children. So with Ettore Prandini, the president of Colleghi Diretti, who was at the Expo. Okay. Energy for Life. It was their exhibition at Expo, and we've started talking about, maybe in a deeper way, about this fight against waste. And Coldiretti, his organisation, has taken this very seriously in this theme. And food waste is one of the hinges of your thinking. So how do you face this? How do you deal with it? Because we think that the first element of freedom is making people not obliged to have to depend on what comes from somebody else. So the situation which today we need to reflect which deals directly with our country, is relevant for us. 5.6 million citizens, Italian citizens, have an impossibility today to have food which is adequate in terms of the quality of life. If we think that the great part of these citizens are youngsters, means that to prejudge them, it prejudices for them the possibility of having an adequate life in terms of their development, their growth, their ambitions. And so the desire is that of creating ever more communities of encounters, of interest, of values, because we speak too little of this. So the theme that's linked to food waste, that today is worth about 15 billion euros in our country, of which maybe 12 billion we have within the family of what's bought and not consumed. We think that we retain that this is fundamental to start from the experiences of dialogue and comparison to manage to educate the collectivity to help even those who find themselves in a worse situation than ours. With whom can we do this? Who has values? Who is inspired by certain values? And even, if you'll allow me, against an idea of globalization of thought, which tends ever more to water down that which characterizes our history, our identity, and these particularly educative elements that we've received even from our families. So we think that this is in our country is an element of communion, and it's not by chance that we're here today, because on this community we are inspired a bit by a characteristic that we can say a path, educational path that we need to hand on to the new generations in some way. So also having the humility to go back to concrete examples of schools that were linked maybe to primary schools, to the education of children, because it's from there we need to start, from primary school age even. So to educate those who educate the more in trouble people that we keep, not trying to marginalize them, but bringing exactly the opposite. And all this, we're able to construct a bit of it because we started in our own turn from a path, a formation of young farmers, young agricultural workers who've grown up now, and what they can't sell, not because it's not good, but because maybe it's less attractive, wonky fruit, etc. The Banco Alimentario is able to give this to families who find themselves in difficulty. So we've resolving the problems. Have we solved all the problems? Certainly not. We've got a journey that we can imagine with important setups. The guy who's going to speak after me is going to speak. So during COVID times, we had an explosion of families that were in difficulties, economic difficulties, and didn't have food on the table. And so in a couple of years, it was doubled the number of families who were in trouble. And the farmers didn't stop a day. The farmers continued producing food. We, Coldiretti, thanks also to the help from Banca Intesa, and thanks also to the food bank, we were able to pick up everything that risked being wasted, and we gave it, I repeat, to those who were in need. So we need to continue working in this point of view. We need to awaken the institutions, even in terms of the norms, rules, so to simplify the bureaucracy in recovering everything that's close to its sell-by date, and making it easier to more simply get it to the families who are in difficulties. So I think that this would be what's characterizing us, and this meeting becomes a way through which we come back to doing communities with a sort of strategic vision, that they can look at what's the essentials, the sensibilities, the values that have historically characterized us, to help bring them forward, show them as examples, and involving new people, involving the whole society. Thank you. Making networks, the importance of building networks. I've left for last, in this first turn of reflections, Stefano Baresi, who's the leader of the division of local banking of Intesa Sanpaolo. So speak to me of, we speak of poverty and you're bringing a bank here. What's going on? So the provocation is to understand that even a bank can help to face this theme of misery that's so widespread. And she's in charge of the territory bank, the local banking division. So how in the different areas can we go and help this difficulty? First of all, thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody. So in theory, there's 5 banks here, not just my bank. So they describe the great contribution they make every day to communities. So a bank has a mission, if you like. First mission is that doing its service in dealing with credit and savings. Thinking what I've just heard now, what should we pay attention to in doing your own work? It's clear that a bank who does the things we've talked about first of all needs to be oriented to making a profit. If that doesn't happen, it's clear that you don't create the conditions for any other opportunity for the communities that are linked to that bank. So I also say that the true point is what is the center of the DNA of who does a business, runs a business. Is the person the true aim, then the profit, or is it the profit as such? So from the point of view of the bank, Intesa Sanpaolo, it's clear that it's the person is the real heart of it. The profit and doing a business to the best of your responsibilities, but to make sure the bank is solid and strong, able to grow and growing, sustaining all the activities linked to it. This is its first responsibility. But here we need to have in mind that these are persons are the heart of this. Through this principle, via this principle, it's clear that in the concept of giving and supporting, we need to put ourselves in play in a way that's industrial, structural. This is something that our bank has done for decades. In fact, after COVID, we reinforced this principle, this way of working, creating a unit that deals exclusively with social questions. So not only coordinates the activities of other things, of many third sector groups, which through what we do at the bank can do their own work, but also that deals with being able to aim at things that were launched in 23, what is basically the greatest intervention and social intervention in Italy, which is a private entity that has as objective to give out a billion and a half of interventions, almost a billion, 60,000 individual interventions through meals, food, medicines, beds, etc. These are all things that activities that help all these areas. Interventions that then are helped, including specific digital projects. We also have our charity fund. We have a platform that allows us to engage the sensibility of the population with this platform for fundraising. It's done exclusively with the aim of furnishing financing on micro communities, without which, without loading them up with fees and commissions. So the many little platforms that are around, fundraising platforms, that maybe they're there to actually make a profit themselves. For us, that's the last thing that we imagine. So this goes into the concept of giving. The bank doing it's the best it possibly can, doing its work as well as it possibly can, and in terms of savings and loans, it does it with the aim of increasing, augmenting, increasing this activity can only grow in the next years. We do it, and the effort of the whole bank, of the 100,000 people who work there, is really this: growing to be able to increase our capacity for have an impact that we can have on society, supporting all these different realities. Alone we couldn't do it. President of the Info Bank, we have 100,000 people, and one of the structural things that we do, because we need to change our hardware, obviously, is that of regenerating them and making them available to people who need them. But this is the way in which you can imagine a route through which each one does their own part. Is the only way in which this country can manage. Is that we need to start from those who've got more means to do it. And so we need strong realities, strong companies or whatever, that are able to generate profit, because only if an organization is strong, and if there are strong means, but even though those, like the state, even the state needs to do this as well, but all those many poor people we were talking about before, but even the many difficulties that we have, let's not forget that we have a shocking number of, as I saw before coming here, we're the last in the class in the league of sorry, I missed that. Of not just poor people, but potential poor people. So we can engage in with youth who don't work, who don't study, who aren't in formation, and think of the relative poverty where they're young people, particularly families who are between 18 and 35 years with a kid, who today are nevertheless working with a family in relative poverty. So it's not just a question of giving, but a question of doing. And we can speak about this later. Thank you.
Scusa, Davide, prima...
So, Davide, we didn't mention it earlier, but the work of the committee and the St. Francis Foundation, this is an effort you were telling me about that's for all of 2026. It will be quite important next year, and St. Francis is a key figure in all of this. So the benefit is that here is if you mention St. Francis, everyone likes him. You know, at this point these days, even to say long live mothers, someone would be angry. Whereas if you say St. Francis, everyone's pretty happy. You know, you can have encounters, meetings, all different kinds of people. I've done them and I've explained everything we're doing, and you'll see it later. You know, we'll be having collections, and you'll be hearing about everything that we'll be doing over the next couple of years. Because we'll be doing lots of great things in Italy and in the world. We're starting to send stable help to where it's needed in future, and not just as a temporary thing. So can I just say one thing quickly? Is it going to be really heavy? No, but it's got nothing to do with the question though. But it's a classic. This is what journalists do. We ask questions. You don't always answer them however we want. I'll launch the question right back to everyone else. We've been hearing some very interesting things. I've knew more or less about most of them, and this comes out from 40 or 50 years of discussion about welfare. And so why have things been getting worse then? If there's so many people involved, and if there's a state that has been trying for 50 years to put welfare at the center of its attention. So why is this data telling us of an increase in poverty? It's a moment in which, we can say we're in a wartime economy in a certain sense right now, in which the needs of the most vulnerable have become secondary. I'm not a politician. I'm not an expert in public economics, but there's clearly something that's not working. There's something that's gone wrong. We need to intervene somehow. There's been an excess of too much need for state-driven interventions. There's been too much globalization, and this combination has produced increased poverty. And we need to look at this more carefully. We need to try and ask a question of why we have such shamefully high salaries, even in this. Some of the banks, it does exist like that. So why is poverty increasing while some people are earning so much money? So, we've been asking these questions for decades, since we've been talking about development since the 70s, and that we've been talking about welfare in a very rhetorical way for a very long time, but the difficulties people are living through is still increasing, and we're talking about more and more about the power of finance, but difficulties for people continue to increase, and so we need to be reasonable here. I mean, this isn't a job for necessarily just for poets like me, or for the people who have been doing great things like those with us here, but it's clear for those who are in politics or in social security systems that we can't keep going on like this with a very overbearing state that makes people poorer and poorer. You need to say, it needs to be said. We need to understand what we need to do. Because, now we're talking about a war against, misery, and I think we've been hearing some beautiful examples here today, but if people's lived experience isn't, if you allow me to use the term, a culture, an idea, a culture, a provocation for politics and for those who build our society, I don't want to take too long, so I don't want to take time from the other. There's a great poet called Mario Luzzi, who is one of my kind of mentors, who told me that being loved doesn't heal solitude. You can feel alone even if many people love you. Loving is what helps make the world more equal. Loving is what helps the world. We're in a society now that's very, it always demands love. We need to feel loved, but rather it's the opposite. You need to be loving. Giussani put charity work at the center of this, because if you do charity work not for yourself, but it's by loving others that you learn to love yourself as well. And we've been hearing some very interesting things here about that. It's loving that helps. You can have a great job, a great family, you can have everything you want, everything you think might be needed. But if you don't love more than you should, if you don't launch yourself, get out there a bit to love, then you're not living well. These proposals by banks, from social agencies, they do have a social value. People love less, and people are more unequal. People are less productive. People who don't love are less productive. They're more sterile. They're less happy, and this is what's leading to these incredible things we've been talking about. The number of young people who don't want to work, who don't want training, and these are uncomfortable questions that we can't just sit on, but we need to find allies in this fight. I've been thinking about what it brings what Cardinal Mantini said come to mind. Only by helping the others can you discover your own humanity. And, we need to be careful. Be careful, cardinals. I've been hearing cardinals talk about poverty a lot, about the poor, and even, trying to be a bit taking too much ownership of what we've been saying. So, we need to do sometimes a bit less rhetoric is more helpful. I'm not an anarchist Catholic. I don't hate the cardinals, but if I hear the church talking too much about the poor, they need to be able to distinguish between poverty, as we've been talking about earlier, and misery, because otherwise, my friend Cardinal Zuppi, which everyone knows, is the biggest property owner in Bologna. When he talks about poverty, he's not very credible. If you're in the nicest palace in the world, it's called the Vatican, you talk about poverty, if you confuse poverty and misery, you're not very credible. So you need to be careful. Poverty is an experience that even the richest man in the world can experience. If when he hugs his children, he knows they aren't his. This is poverty. Misery is something else entirely. St. Francis said, both the rich and the poor need to give something back. So, be careful. We're here at the meeting, I say, even in the world of the church, we need to be careful to not confuse poverty and misery. Because poverty is an outlook towards the world and towards yourself. Misery is an experience that must be fought against. And we also thank Cardinal Zuppi, and we'll say hello to him, and we know he's listening. And I think this idea of how to be more close to the poor, he has it rooted in a certain sense, but let's not drag on about this too much. So I'd rather take on from this challenge, and so we'll talk more about the network building quickly here, the importance of being as part of a network to try and confront all these different types of poverty and of needs that we're confronted with. So if the topic is of what we have, so we can only work better together by being together. So getting together can mean a lot of things. I want to say one quick thing that came out based on what we just heard earlier, but also from Brandini, that I'm convinced that when we talk about the civil responsibilities of businesses, it is more than a social responsibility. He gives to businesses a need that the responsibility that by doing what they're doing, they need to keep an awareness of everything. They need to put it in their heads. They need to contribute to building the structure for social cohesion, for this fight against misery. And I think this is the most important thing, that we need to build networks truly. We need to look at who are building businesses, who are helping out the citizens most, and we need to build a network between these people. And you have hundreds of thousands of volunteers here, and of people who work in these systems. And only in this way can we build the experience I'm talking about and draw out the value. And so the possibility to find a solution by demonstrating the sense of civic responsibility as well as a social one. And what kind of journey could you point for us? So I'll repeat what I said earlier. So we think that training, education is the key that needs to be rediscovered, starting from the new generations, which doesn't mean, ignoring the rest of society, but we need to, give some concrete examples to people that represent, in a systematic sense, not just the just being negative doesn't help positivity grow among new generations. It risks rather flattening many other ways of thinking. Rather, we should try and rediscover as well the possibility of helping people perceive the good things, the good about what we heard earlier, the good about being together, the good about loving your neighbor, the good that's behind helping those in need. I cite many things that as Coldiretti we've tried to do quietly, giving food to Gaza, which was simply trying to gather food to send to a population that's living in a dramatic situation, and that it's scary, the fact that there are thousands of children who die every day, and where you need to be careful of the balance of political balances on this topic. I think there are two victims here, and I'll be a bit less equal here, both the Israeli people and the Palestinian people. But we need to distinguish, different from the people who govern them. We need to be careful of these fundamentalists who use the governments of these people to inflict violence, and we need to be careful. We need to challenge this, to confront this narrative, and deal with helping the kids, not by just reducing them and mixing them in with all of this. There's a certain aspect that the new generations, there's a part of them who are less interested, who don't really care as much. But I'm one of those people who believes in the new generations. We have a number of young people who they're geniuses. They're great. We need to put our trust in these kids. I don't want to sound like a populist. I want to underline one thing here, that until we're in a situation in which a kid with, a training contract after his degree, after he's graduated, earns 500-600 euros a month, what kind of a future can we imagine for this kid? What can they hope to do anything? And then we complain when our smart kids go to other countries. These are concrete facts that we need to change. Our society needs to change, and we need to avoid that so many young people are in a situation of economic difficulty. And we go back to the thing we said at the beginning, that there are people who can't even afford food that has any kind of dignity to it. And provide that dignity to their own lives and to their own futures and their families. I've gone over now the time I was given to me, but how can we change? By being together, by challenging each other. This round table in this community is fundamental because it brings together different ideas, different people who have the same values. And so let's restart from those values. Let's go back to education. Let's go back to love for your neighbor. And I think that the future, even for our country, can be better compared to those which we've been living recently.
Okay, last time round, I'm sure we're going to deal with the journalists, Odette, but how can a bank, you're the biggest in our country, how can a bank bring forward a systematic project for struggling against poverty in education, in economic inequality? So certainly, let's think. Sorry, I think there are some questions here. But there are banks that do their work, and that Italy grows. And if it does, it's because thanks to a banking system that also helps families. And we need to have credit for what we've done. So something that's growing importantly is the credit given to family for mortgages. So let's think about doing, because giving somebody. Well, we have the possibility to give out money if you've got it, then it's great that you distribute it, that's fine. But also putting people in the conditions to live better, to be able to find work through education, which can make them able to have not just a food voucher, but also able to go to university, because looking at the papers, you can see that it's true that these kinds of poverty have grown. But if you go in detail, these poverties have grown for two reasons. Because the largest part of these families, under 35 years with family, they're renting. They don't have a home. They don't own a home. And most of these people in relative poverty people are workers or unemployed people. So low salaries or no salary. So what can we do? Each one can do their own part, but there's no point in spreading blame around for where we are today. But what each one can do is provide the conditions through which everybody can feel better, can be able to be better off. So education, we mustn't think of it just as the cost of education and such, but it's the maintenance today is the thing for kids who want to get a diploma. The fact that the bank is using its patrimony to enable a student to have a minimum of 5,000 or more to be able to maintain themselves while they study, regardless of what the family can do for them. It's important that a bank can do that. We do this. It's been for years we've used the patrimony, the inheritance of the bank, to provide the means through which people can increase the quality of their education. It's not just for universities. They also do this. 50-year-olds who, seeing the current context of what's needed, they decide to increase their own educational level to be able to reach a better salary. And we do these things at low risk, with lowest interest rates levels, bearing all the risk ourselves on the bank. So many people have had access to this, and this is doing in terms of mortgages. It's been for many years that the bank has put at the disposition of young people mortgages that are structurally more advantageous than those on the market. Through this, we can do a great synergy, because with together with the strengths like the funds from the state, that we give the possibility to arrive up to 100% of the value of the house. This isn't possible for banks, not because banks are evil, but for rules we can't go beyond 80% of the value. So we need to have a system that would let us to do this, but it's expensive. The fact of having a fund that supports this allows you to fill that gap, to close that gap a bit between the people who pay rent and a mortgage, which is structurally more worthwhile than a paying rent. Then also constructing savings, because a home becomes effectively a savings product, investment. Rent is just money that's consumed, whereas through a mortgage, you build something up. And this is the way that over the years many young people can possess a house. So we have 16 billion in mortgages, of which most of them go to families, young people. So if we want to share the blame around about while we're here, then we won't. Just an encounter like this wouldn't be enough. Let's say, the question is, do we forget everything, or but each one of us should do what they can. They say the poet can make a great contribution. Each one of us can do, and pulling together other forces, each one doing the best that we can. And every year we say, we're in a situation of accounting that we haven't seen in the last 10, 15 years. So we need to help, we do things that we couldn't do a little while ago. So now, first there's COVID, then there's a situation of war. It's going beyond risk with regards to what the strengths, the capacities, the responsibilities that they have in producing well the profit of their own business, to then contribute to sustain naturally these associations which do work that's from my point of view that's amazing. Thank you. I think we can all grasp this idea that we need to go beyond and not stop where we are, not stop at polemics. So, in fact, Buona Notizia newspapers for this. So, if errors were made, then yeah, we need to know about them to avoid them. But beyond that, there's a responsibility for each one of us as with their own humanity, with their own professionalism, is called to be a brick, a new brick. And so let's conclude this encounter, which I have just a last thought from Davide Rondoni, which is the theme of this meeting, in the vacant places we build with new bricks. So looking at poverty, and indeed of material poverty, but also spiritual poverty, what is the new brick that each one of us as an individual, you think you could say, could use to build something in the vacant place in the desert? So I want to say clearly I love Zuppi very much. I've got an account with Banca Intesa. Maybe it's not the biggest one at all you've got, but maybe it's the worst one. But I've got no problem with anybody. You know, a great French poet, Baudelaire, said the crisis in civility is one of worsening of hearts. So what we want to do is reignite our hearts, reignite what animates us, as he said, everyone doing their own part. But if you've already finished, then you'd go anywhere. But if we put together with burning hearts and maybe even discussing, arguing, the heart, the weakening of the heart. If you nourish your heart, then it won't become weakened like this. So what helps is what can nourish our heart, and that makes us more able not just to help others, but to face problems without fear and with a great hope. For our young people, if you'll allow me a little joke, we've all seen how many gold medals our young people have won around the world. How come they're so good in some fields, and in others it seems like they want to escape from Italy? Because in sport, and firstly the institutions bet on them, that they don't weaken or waste talents, and then a minute is a minute. It's a real measurement. It's not that the cousin of the important advocate can run for, is treated better. Talent we need, and real measures, true measures. Thank you. Thank you to all our guests. Thank you to those who followed along here, and to those who listened in from home. I recall to you that another little brick we can all do is a contribution to help the meeting. There are the places with the red heart donor order stands around, so please help out to help for this year and for the future years. Thank you all, and have a good afternoon.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
che si impegna, che si batte,
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo esiste anche grazie a te.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con EasyBank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. EasyBank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'Iter Communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'Iter Communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'Iter Communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'Iter Communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'Iter Communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'Iter Communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.